Agencies fail more frequently when they start to get clients. So this video today is going to be outlining why you should be tracking your numbers like your life depends on it. So we're going to be covering everything from sales and revenue metrics, so looking at MRR, sales conversion rates, the percentage revenue growth rate, and CLV, which is client lifetime value. And then lead generation metrics, looking at CPL, lead to customer conversion, CAC, ROAS. Then we're also going to be looking at client retention and satisfaction. So looking at everything in between, from client churn rate, the NPS score, upsell, cross-sell, and cash flow metrics. So your profit margins, your gross, net, and OPEX, which is operating expenses. But we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a second. So let's start with the first one, sales and revenue metrics. Now, first of all, we need to be tracking our MRR. So this stands for monthly recurring revenue. Now, as some of you guys watching this video will already have retained business, you will already be familiar with monthly recurring revenue. But it's so important to track this. How? Because some people are tracking it by the amount of clients that they've got and just adding continuously. So let's say you've got a retainer of 2K per month. Now, well done, congratulations, you've got a retainer. As you add another 2 retainers, your MRR will be 6K per month. However, the reason why we need to track our monthly recurring revenue is because, as we know in this space, we might lose a client, which means our MRR all of a sudden will drop to 4K per month. Now, the problem with that, if we're not tracking it, we could still have the same level of expenses that we had when we have 6K per month. So if your expenses at this point, just for this example, is 4K, if we lose one client, all of a sudden, we are then breaking even and we're not making any money for our business. Hence why we need to make sure that we're tracking monthly recurring revenue. We need to be looking at how long that retainer is lasting, so we can then use the data to understand the LTV, which is lifetime value of an average prospect for your business. Okay, so your lifetime value. Now this will help you really kind of understand how long is that client going to be on that journey for you. You might find that your clients usually stay around 3 to 6 months, which means that we can then incorporate a plan when it comes to our agency, when it comes to adding more retained business. When do we need to make sure that we're leveraging more outreach or inbound channels to be able to increase the number of retainers, because we're going to have some drop off. So MRR is super important to be able to calculate, but also sales conversion rate. So I'm going to do this one down here. Hopefully you guys will still be able to see it. Sales conversion rate is essentially tracking the lead to sale. So it's nice and easy, okay? However, we need to be able to use some metrics in here. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because we can understand that if, let's say, we have 10 discovery calls per week, and then we have 5 demos, because what you might do is disqualify some discoveries, and then you've got 5 demos, and then you've got 1 client, okay, out of that. That means your close rate is kind of arse at 20%, and you can kind of improve that. If you watch my videos, you will learn how to improve that, especially if you're inside client capital. But let's say your close rate is 20%. We really need to understand how many leads did it take us to get to this 10 discoveries, to get to these 5 demos, to get to this 1 client, and then that's going to be able to give us an indication of how much work on the front end and the back end to get more business into our business. So I'm going to rub the whiteboard clean, and then we're going to look at percentage revenue growth rate and then CLV. Now, when we look at percentage revenue growth rate, this is essentially working out month on month and year on year what the percentage growth is. So for example, let's take, for this example, month 1, month 2, and month 3. So in month 1, we did 2K. In month 2, we did 5K. And in month 3, we did 6K. Your opportunity here is to work out the percentage growth. Now the reason why we're doing this is because we're going to be able to identify a few things here. Oh, that was a rubbish percentage sign. So the reason why we're doing this is because we can really identify a few things. First thing that we can identify is what bottlenecks have we fixed to get to 5K, because you've done something with your business. Remember, business is not luck. There is an element of luck, but it's 99% processes, systems, and hard work. So realistically, we can then identify what we've been doing well. Have we increased our outbound? Have we introduced an inbound structure? Have we just changed our branding? Have we really kind of dived into brand perception? Have we leveraged more case studies and testimonials? This is going to help us be able to understand, but it's also going to be able to help us project revenue. And that means we can start to incorporate revenue-driven targets that make sense for our business to help us get to the next level. Now, CLV, this just stands for client lifetime value, okay? Now, I touched on it just briefly a second ago about LTV, okay? The reason why we want to know this is if our clients stay on average 3 months, like I explained, we then know what to be putting in place to increase that percentage, okay? That must mean that we need to put a bit more work in terms of service delivery, in terms of customer success. How can we increase that percentage? And normally it's going to be customer success and service delivery, right? Now, when I mean customer success, what I mean is looking at things like going above and beyond, providing additional communication. What else can you do to make that client's journey with you so much more effective so that they think and know that you're the agency of choice? You have to stand out in this agency game if you want to be able to succeed. Do not be like the other agencies. Do things like going through their existing funnel. Do things like going to meet them in person if you can. Do things like really trying to add value to their business. Offer them insights that perhaps you don't even normally offer. That is what's going to take you to increase this percentage level. And obviously service delivery. If you're struggling with service delivery, start to outsource an expert when you're on 6K a month, right? There is no point in you taking absolutely everything yourself. You will be a freelancer if you do this. You need to be able to outsource. And when we outsource, we can find professionals that are better than us to do things like media buying, to do things like email marketing, to do things like lead generation. Like, these guys are trained to be better than us. So then we're going to move on to lead generation metrics. So guys, when we're looking at lead generation metrics, it's important to understand CPL, which is cost per lead. How much is it costing me per lead? If we can work this out, then we can work out how much we can invest in our business to be able to scale it upwards. But also, we can work out other metrics, like, for example, our booking rate, our no-show rate, our close rate. And this is going to allow us to build the fundamentals of an inbound system. If we have the data and we have the metrics, we can scale effectively. Then we can look at lead to customer conversion. So essentially is our close rate, but also looking at how that lead goes through a specific journey and then we're essentially working out the percentage so that we can understand what it is to make that lead a client. So then we've got customer acquisition cost. Again, a very important metric for us to really understand how much it costs per customer that we acquire into our business. And then ROAS. Now, you guys should already understand what ROAS is, but it is the return on ad spend. Definitely should know this if you are a lead generation agency and you are focusing on Facebook ads. Now, the good thing about this, guys, inside Client Capital, we have all of this information readily available so you can actually understand how to run an inbound system. And in fact, we do have a service where it is done for you, which is even better. However, please make sure that you are tracking these lead generation metrics, because without the metrics, without the data, we are going to very much struggle to scale in the right direction. What can happen is you can be spending too much money on ads and you're not getting the return. And then you're in a negative. And the minute you're in a negative, you're kind of at a catch-22, because if you turn off your ads because they're not working very well, you turned off the revenue tap into your business. So it's so important to make sure that we can use this data to identify any bottlenecks in the business. Because if we can identify the bottlenecks, there is a nice little bottle that I've just drawn. But if you can identify the bottlenecks in the business, you can work out how you can scale. So guys, when we look at client retention and satisfaction, we really need to understand why this data is so important for us as a business. If we can determine our data for client satisfaction, we can understand our churn rate. Now, our churn rate is when our clients are churning. And now if we understand that, what we can do is start to do effective revenue projections based on how long a client is going to stay with us, roughly. But also what we can do, guys, is we can really understand where we're going wrong. So is this service delivery? Is this customer success? Is this client communication? Or is it you do the work too quickly? The whole point of understanding this data is so that we can effectively scale our business. Cool. Then we look at the NPS score. Now, the NPS score stands for Net Promoter or Promoted Score. Now, this essentially means if we score our clients, let's say, for example, 7, 8, 9, or 10, this essentially means how likely is that client going to recommend our agency. Now, the reason why this is so important is because what we can then do is leverage word of mouth referrals. Now, we all started agencies for this exact reason. The minute we start getting word of mouth referrals, this is essentially free clients. If a client reaches out to you based on a success story from another client that is a friend, you will sign that client so easy, as long as they have the budget. Then the last thing is upsell / cross-sell. We need to be tracking this data. We need to be looking at the percentage of clients we are upselling. Because if we're reviewing this data and we're noticing that there are a bunch of clients that haven't been upsold, we are leaving money on the table. Because remember what I've always told you guys. Now, you guys in Client Capital will know this. Once someone has paid, they are likely to pay twice. Because they already believe in you, they believe in your agency, they believe in your delivery. This is where we can make so much more revenue. Now, there's actually an interesting case study that I'm going to drop here for my own service, Client Capital. There was a guy, and I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying his name. His name's Matt. He's inside Client Capital. He joined Client Capital when he was on 1K a month. The first thing I told him to do was upsell his existing clients that were on retainers of about £300 a month. And he literally 3x'd his revenue overnight. So, shout out Matt Digby in Client Capital Network. Well done, mate. But that just says something. You guys need to be able to upsell your existing clients initially. But if you can track this data, you can do it effectively. We're now going to move on to cash flow metrics. Now, when we're talking cash flow metrics, guys, we need to be looking at profit / loss, and we need to be looking at operating expenses, okay? So this is your costs for the business to operate. Now, if you don't know your costs in a business, you are essentially fucked because you don't know what your profit margins are. So we need to understand our profit. And to be honest, I hate even putting loss here because if you're running an agency, you should not be at a loss ever unless you are spending too much on ads. So let's call this profit net / gross, okay? Make sure you know the difference because it's very important. Now, the reason why it's so important to make sure that we're measuring cash flow metrics is because, again, we can break this down in percentages. We can break this down into numbers, and we can actually create a value-driven, let's say, metric to scale. Because if we understand what our profit margins are, we can use that profit to invest in the right direction, which is going to increase the OPEX, but also increase the revenue. Now, for those of you that have watched this video the whole way through, I'm about to give you guys a great thing. Message me on Instagram. It is DT Busy. I am going to give you free template for your profit margins, your loss, your OPEX. So just as a thank you for watching my video, if you're inside Client Capital, you'll already have access to this. If you haven't, message me on Instagram and you can put YouTube as the DM. I'm going to give you a free asset that is going to allow you to be able to incorporate all of your revenue, your costs, and even a cumulative profit and loss. Which essentially means the money being carried over. Month on month. Or otherwise known as cash in bank. Cool. So look, hopefully guys, you now understand why it's so important to track your numbers. Obviously, we can't go into absolutely every metric here because we're on a whiteboard and I don't have my Excel spreadsheet in front of me. But at least this is going to give you the importance of what you should be tracking as an agency owner so that you can continue to scale once you've got a few clients. Remember what I said? Message me on Instagram, which is DT Busy, and just put YouTube in speech marks and I will give you a free template just because you watched the whole way through. Cool. Good luck and subscribe.